Not quite sure what's happened to Paul at the moment. He's
I think he might have been having trouble with his headphones. He kept looking at them.
oh, right. Yeah. Oh, probably battery failed on them if they're wireless ones, aren't they?
Well, he's smiling at least in his picture, so.
Yeah.
Hello, Peter's by the sea.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Is it foggy down? Is it foggy down there, Peter, or is it?
What?
Is it foggy down there?
no,
No. No.
no, the sun's shining. It's nice and
Lovely.
bright. I mean, I haven't been down to the sea, but normally the fog drifts up here. So
Yeah.
I was amazed to find how high sea fog can drift. You know, I've seen it coming over the top of Selworthy Beacon, which is 1,000 foot high.
yeah.
Mm.
It's amazing.
That's just a low cloud, Dom. That's
No.
low cloud, we call it.
No, it isn't.
Low cloud. Yeah.
No, it's not. You can see it quite clearly. It's just coming up. You can see it coming up sometimes.
It's funny, we don't get any sea fog in Yeovil.
No.
Because you can't see much.
No, but we do see fog in Yeovil.
Yeah, so let's not argue over spelling, shall we?
Who's arguing?
Yeah.
We get it on Portsdown Hill sometimes. You can be up there at the club room with what looks like fog. It's low cloud. You drive down the hill and you come out of it. Then you go into the fog at the bottom.
It's not unusual in the in around these areas. If you go over the hills, you're looking down on just like a sea of fog with just the odd chimney top poking out of it.
Yeah.
I've been up on Selworthy Beacon, and it's just sort of like a blanket between there and the Welsh hills, Welsh mountains. You know.
Yeah, and that's on a good day. When you hills, it's not so nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then some jet comes zipping through. Yeah.
Yes, it's a bit like you get these false pictures. I remember when I was fishing on the River Yeo near Yeovilton, and it was an idyllic scene. It was a nice green field. The river was running, meandering through the field, and there was an overhanging willow tree, and there was chub swimming around underneath the tree. And you thought, well, this is what England's all about. And then a couple of jump jets just scream over the top of you at low height, because that's where they're just taking off.
Yeah. Not anymore, they don't, they? They're all gone now, aren't they?
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
You see, there's a Wessex flying around from Yeovil these last few days.
I've seen
Yeah,
a
there's
Chinook.
an old Wessex, Wessex 5 flying around. Long time since I've seen one of those.
I wonder what the vibrations were.
Portsdown Hill, Tony, reminds me of other things, shall we say?
Oh, well, I used to work on the top of Portsdown Hill.
Yeah.
The Admiralty Surface Weapons Establishment.
Yeah.
Which seemed a bit strange because I was attached to a submarines trials unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to several meetings there.
But it's still there. Not quite the same as it was, but it's.
No, the last time I went past, a lot of it's all disappeared, isn't it?
Yeah, the old buildings have gone, but the stuff up where the concrete masts are, that's still there.
Yeah.
And the huts around that bit.
Can I just do a test to see if I can show you the screen all right?
Yeah, you can do, John. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Right, you can see that fair enough, can't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Judging by the England performance, you shouldn't mention the word
No.
test.
Definitely not.
No, it's just I've not done screen share and that before, so I just wanted to check
All right,
that
yeah.
you could actually see something. Otherwise, it'd be a rather sort of fraught couple of hours, I expect.
Tony, haven't you not had your jab
Oh,
yet?
me? Yeah, sorry, I haven't
Yeah.
got my star up.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I went last Sunday. Last Sunday.
Last
Yeah.
Sunday, yeah. How about your
Yeah,
wife?
yeah,
Did she
yeah.
go to hers yet?
We both booked in on a week last Friday.
Don't tell me they do the husband and wife together by putting the needle through one and
Yeah.
straight into the other.
Almost, but not quite. Yeah. we were in the same booth together. They said, oh yeah, come in together.
we were we're in different
Oh, right,
surgeries,
yeah.
and so we're a week
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah, no, we went out. We thought, oh well, let's have a nice day out. So we had a little trip up to Shepton Mallet on Sunday.
Oh, you had to go to the big one up there. You didn't go down the
Yeah,
gateway
because
then.
we booked in through. In fact, it's ironic. My brother-in-law told me about it. He said, if you've got your NHS number, just go onto the website and book in, and if you're eligible, they'll book you in. So they did. So we booked to go to Shepton Mallet. So I thought we'd have a little trip out. It's very quiet there, actually. And then on Monday, I got my letter. And on Tuesday, Di got her letter.
yeah, that's what happened with me. I got the letter after I'd had the vaccine. Yeah.
They've got our my mobile number, so they just sent me a text.
Yes,
Oh, right.
that's right. Yeah.
Thing, and that worked well because it just click on the text and it takes you onto the site and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, with me they just phoned. They just
Oh,
phoned
they will.
us up. They phoned us up the day before, and then they said, "Are you able to make it?" And you have to sort of get them to hold on a moment while you consult your diary.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever was in the diary is cancelled.
You mean you got something in the diary apart from dates?
Merg meetings.
Yeah.
Morning, Clive. Clive takes a bit longer joining because he's coming all the way from the South Hants group.
And Tony as well.
Time warp up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Tony. Tony must have got an earlier train.
Yeah.
I reckon he's nearer to
Airing duties in the morning before I can log on to the computer, unfortunately.
Well, apart from having a shower and getting dressed, I did have to make a cup of coffee.
Similar here.
I was lucky this morning. The dog didn't want to go too far.
He made it to the front door, did he?
Oh no, it gets up the road and then it keeps sort of turning around and saying, "Can we go back now? Can we go back now?" You know.
He's obviously worried about the virus.
Yeah.
Worried about his breakfast, more likely.
Congratulations, Peter, on your second star.
Oh, I've had that for a long time.
Yeah.
9th of January, I got that.
Gosh.
Yeah, he's got connections in the National Health Service, I think.
He's a 2-star general now.
Yeah.
No, I didn't pull any strings at all. It was all the first. They phoned me up for the first one, and they booked me in for the second one 3 weeks afterwards. So
That's good.
and then they obviously made light work, because instead of phoning everybody up who was booked in for the second one and cancelling it, and then having to phone another lot for their first ones, they just said, "Don't listen to what's in the media. Come along on Saturday, have your second one." So it saved them a bout of phone calls. So,
Yeah.
so
Are you involved with the McKinley Road project at all, Peter?
no. No, I know of it. I think Adrian Swain, when he was with us, I think he had connection with it.
I recognise you, so I must have seen you somewhere else.
Oh, well, you've seen, if you're from the South Hants group, I mean, Tony will recognise me as
Yeah.
well. You know, I used to, well, a little bit of history. I started off the Portsmouth exhibitions that were held in March because I was chairman of what was then the Portsmouth Railway Circle. Right. That then sort of transpired into the South Hants group, but there was a meeting down at some church. I can't remember the name of the church now. And then you went to the council building at the end of on the Eastern Road there, and then you moved up to Portsdown Hill. So yes, you would have seen me at the Portsmouth Railway exhibitions that were in March and then transferred to November. You would have seen me at the EM Gauge Expo Souths at Portsmouth, and also when they were held in Bournemouth, because I used to organise the Bournemouth one. So yes, sorry.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you'll have to close your eyes.
We had a trip to McKinley Road that was organised by the Merg South Hants group, and there was a gentleman of a similar age and similar appearance to you there.
Oh, it weren't I.
Weren't you? I wondered as you were in Bournemouth whether it was.
No, I knew of it, but I think it was an unfortunate time or something that I couldn't do it, because I look after a 64-year-old with learning difficulties who's a diabetic to boot. So I have to make sure that there's food on the table. And
yeah, I have the same issue, though it's not learning difficulties in my case.
No,
it's physical disability.
Yeah. So anything of an evening during the week is a bit of a problem, especially when I was working.
I think the one we did, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, I think we went on a Saturday or a Sunday in the afternoon.
I don't know, because I didn't do it either.
Oh, right.
For some reason, it's either before I was in the group, or I couldn't do it because I was doing something else.
Yeah, it's not all that long ago we went. I'd certainly recommend it, Paul, if I can't even see him now. If you want to do a trip out sometime, once we can do such things. It is the most unbelievable layout I've ever seen, and apparently it's 50% bigger than it was before.
Yeah, I've seen it.
He's got a scale at 8-mile long fiddle yard to give you some idea of the size of it. And he's got Birmingham, Manchester, and London, and it's something like a 20-minute trip between each of them, because everything circles round under the board, so you can't see it, and you get given a tablet and told, okay, you're looking after all the shunting and organising at Manchester, I think it was in my case, and the tablet comes up and says, well, in 10 minutes you need this loco out ready to swap over with the existing one on the train, and so on. Or you need to put this train together. It's a pretty impressive thing to play with.
That's no good. I've forgotten how to control modern railway trains because it's all automatic now.
His is automatic.
Right, I think we've got most of the people here now, Don. If I make them all mute, which would be a godsend, really. And if you can unmute yourself, you'll be able to start. Okay.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Right, this is the subject of the talk today. We're looking at the CANCMD and the CANCAB. Right, and then just a brief thing here. You all know this, but it's a fully functional DCC system. This does everything that one would expect of a DCC system. The network that is used between the cabs and the command station for the MSAG system is the C-bus ones. If it was Lens, it would be the ExpressNet. If it's Digitrack, it's LocoNet. They all need some kind of mechanism between the cabs and the command system, or they have to be connected directly to them. The advantage of the C-bus one, of course, is that it could be the same network that does other things, and that it's integrated with MSAG's main layout control network. You don't need to use a CAN-CAB. You can have a JMRI connection through a CAN USB 4. You can actually have the CAN USB JMRI and the CAN-CAB working together. The CAN-CMD doesn't mind. And you can have interaction, as I said, with other C-bus modules. So it's a pretty sophisticated system. This is what I intend to go through. First of all, I'm going to run through the CAN-CMD2 schematic and the key elements. Then I was going to take a brief look at how the DCC packet formats are made up. This is not something you need to know. It's the kind of thing like, you know, whether your wife needs to understand how the ignition works on a car or something. You know, it's not something you need to know, but it's to try and give you some understanding of what it's doing and how it's working, because it's quite a complex sort of system. And then we look at the C-bus opcodes. Now, the C-bus opcodes are the way the information from the CAN-CAB gets sent to the command station. So in the format there, you can see how the things work. It's more useful to understand that than how the circuitry actually works, because that's the key thing, the information exchange. And then we look at the CAN-CAB schematic and key elements. And then I'll look into documentation, user guide and connections. Is that cover everything anybody wants? Or is there anything that you think's missing? Can you?
You just present what you've got.
Fair enough. We'll go on from there. Right, this is the build instructions you get on the CAN CMD. And on the last page, if you see at the back of this, is a schematic. This is, can you now see the CAN-CAB?
Yeah, we can, Don.
The thing, right? This is the schematic for the Mark II one, right? And if we start up at the top left-hand corner, you can see where the power input comes in, yeah?
Yep.
And it can be 0 to 12 volts is too low. So 0 to 15, and it could go up to the 20s, but normally 15 to 18 volts is considered adequate there. And then the first thing is you get a 12 volt, a 7812 IC7, which is a 12 volt regulator. And the 12 volt supply does two things. One, it's available via link 2 to go out on the cab with the CAN network to feed the cabs. Now, this is something you only need to use if you haven't got a separate 12 volt supply going round. So if you're just using the CMD and the CANCAB, you would probably want to use that 12 volt supply for the CANCABs. But if you've got a working C-bus network and you've got an independent 12 volt supply, you would use that for the CANCABs. The other thing that it does is it reduces the voltage so that the next IC2, which is a 7805, which is a 5 volt voltage regulator, doesn't have to do so much work. Because if you fed that IC2 with about 18 volts, it'd probably need a very big fat heat sink to protect it. And that 5 volt supply drives the PIC and the transceiver and things like that. So that's the main one there. And then a little further along, you've got IC5 on the top line, which is an LM317T. Now that's an adjustable voltage regulator. And if you can see VR1 just below it and a resistor network, that produces the output for the traction voltage. And that goes down to feed IC6 and IC4, which are the booster output and the traction output. And normally that would be set for something like 14 volts or 16 volts, whatever you want out on your DCC. Right. Coming down to the next sort of level, on the left, you've got an MCP 2562. This is a transceiver. It receives in the CAN messages and passes them to the PIC. It sends out the messages from the PIC out on the CAN network, and that's its function in life. It doesn't do anything about the control of the circuitry. It's just the interface between the PIC and the CAN network. But that's where your messages from the CANCAB will come in. Then the big box in the middle, this is the PIC, and it's a PIC 18F2580, which is a fairly large one. And this has to do all the donkey work. It does all the logic things and that. Then over the other side, on the going up one, you've got IC6, which is a MOSFET driver. So that's the output stage driven by which uses MOSFETs, and that sends out. I don't know. Can I get that back in? Let's see if I can. Yeah, on that to the right of that, you'll see it says the shutdown and DCC signal out. So the DCC signal is what goes to a booster, and that will tell it. It gets the normal signal that will go out to the track, but the booster just takes it and amplifies it as a power one. So that's not power sufficient to power a loco or anything. It's just a booster output. The shutdown is where you can actually send out a signal to boosters to shut down and that sort of thing. And then you've also got a 0 volt and an output there, which it says can be used for external devices, but I'm not sure what external devices you might want to run off it. It's only got a limited power, which it shares with the traction output, which is about 1.5 amp. So unless you've got sort of just an odd thing, I wouldn't, it's certainly not enough to power a booster. The booster needs its own power supply. And then the last thing we want to look at of things is IC4, and that's an LM6202. And this is the traction one. Now, the CANCMD has the capability of either feeding a programming track, or it can actually feed the layout as a low power one. It's about 1 amp of power. But for a small layout, with modern locos, that's perfectly adequate. And that puts the DCC output on J3, which is the marked as traction output. There's a link, if you come down to the bottom line where the LEDs are, to the right of them, there's a link which is J7. The presence of that link tells the PIC that you want a traction output that will drive trains and not a programming output. So if you're trying to do service mode programming, you would have to remove that link and stop the traction to make it work as a programming track. All right. And then the LEDs down there, you've got give you the signals to tell you if there's something happening. And there's another one over by the traction output, which tells you that you've got traction output. This is all detailed in the build instructions, and you go through the sequence of what they do. So that's the main circuit. Is there any queries on that schematic that anybody would like to ask? Can you indicate to Paul that you would like to, you've got a query?
Paul's got his own query. Don, do you know what the current limit is on the programming output? Is it sort of I know with some units I've had in the past, proprietary units, it's been something like 100 milliamps to avoid blowing up the chips and things.
I haven't actually looked into what it is. It's not
Right, okay.
It's not enough to drive a train, but it will. No. It's enough just to make a loco move. You know, when you do some of the programming, the loco will just sort of twitch a bit, or it's just got enough power to do that, but not to drive a train.
Yeah. Okay, so it's quite low.
Yeah, yeah. And the traction output is about 1 amp that you can use. So that's that there.
Isn't the traction output, if you're going to use a booster, then the traction output becomes a programming output, doesn't it?
You take out that link 7, which I mentioned, down, if you can see it next to those 3 LEDs at the bottom. You take that out, and that will make that a programming output. So that's the idea, is that normally if you were using a booster, you just use that traction output as the programming track, and you don't bother with any power to it. But if you just want to run it itself and not use a booster, on a small layout it works fine. You can just use the traction output. Is that clear?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. It's just you can't use the booster output itself, because that's just logic. There's no power to that at all.
It hasn't got the sensing ability. That it doesn't do the, when you use service mode programming, the command station senses a current going through the motor to read the CVs, etc. And that booster output doesn't do that. So there's no way you could get a service mode programming anywhere other than through that IC4 with the link 7 out. It's that's how it works. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Can't
Good.
remember, what does that J6 do, the external AWD connector? I can't remember what that link does.
That's the short warning. It will warn you if there's a short circuit. It will also scream at you if there's no CAN connection, which people often find on power up or something, that if you powered up the CANCAB and there's no other the CANCMD and there's nothing out there, it will no CANCABs or anything, it'll notice and let you know. Some people find these audible warnings very annoying, but at least you can actually just unplug it if it bothers you. And just rely, because you'll also, if you get a short, the yellow LED will be flashing. That's the left hand one of those bottom LEDs. That should flash to tell you there's a short. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Is the external AWD, the signal, is it just turning it on and off, or does that actually generate the what 1 kilohertz or whatever it is that you hear? So because you can get audible warning devices that oscillate themselves, or you can get something like a piezo sounder, which you need to actually pulse it.
I think it's just a piezo sounder. I haven't actually. You don't get anything more to tell you what's actually in there, but I think it's just a piezo sounder by looking at it.
Okay.
It doesn't appear to have any extra circuitry with it. And I can't actually look very easily at the code. The PIC is programmed in, it's quite a complicated programming, and it was only put on the knowledge base this month, last month, about the middle of February, before you could get a look at it. And I've looked at it, and to be honest, and knowing what I'm going to go through anyway, it takes quite a lot to sort out how everything works on there. I tell you, it's quite a complicated bit of programming.
Come back next year then, Don, and explain it.
Well, yeah, no. If somebody needs to know because they want to do something, I will go through it and come back to them. But it's just that there's so much going on this that I couldn't cover every little bit on there. So that's fine. But do you want to know for a good reason, Ron?
Me? No, it's well, you mean as far as the external connector? Well, it's external AWD. I just wondered if it was a sort of a 1 kilohertz signal coming out that was being generated in the processor.
I think it must. I think it must be. I'll look into that and let you know. Okay,
no problem. Fine. Cheers.
Yeah.
One of the previous versions is listed as a 12-volt piezo sounder.
Yeah,
I think would be an inbuilt oscillator. Ah, okay. So that would just be basically a switch on and off then.
Yeah. Right. So can I move on?
Yes, you can, Don.
Right. So we'll just change the screen again. Right. Next thing we look at is DC packets, and then we'll go on to C-bus opcodes. As I said earlier, this is not something that a user needs to know, but I just think it's worth going through some of it to give you an appreciation of how the thing works and do it. So for those of you that may have looked into DCC and studied it, I apologize. You probably know more than I do, but it's, yeah. So first thing is, it just uses like what you can term either square wave pulses or some people call it bipolar, but the voltage will swap from plus 14 or 16 or whatever to minus. And the timing of these is used to encode it. So you have short pulses to represent a 1 and longer pulses to represent a 0. And this, to indicate that you're going to start a new packet, you first of all have to have 14 ones, and the decoder will look to get most of them. It needs to get at least 12, I think, before it'll regard it as being a proper, what they call it, and it's called a preamble, that is. There's no information in it, it just lets it know that information is coming. Then you get a start bit 0, and that is followed by, first of all, the address data byte or bytes, and then there's data bytes, 1 or more, and then there's an error byte. So the basic format you have is this bit I put down here: 14 ones, then a 0, then 8 bits that do the address, then another 0 to say that the next bit's data. So then you get 8 bits for your basic data byte, and then you get another 0, and then the extended bit bytes. So that's how it's done. But you know that anybody that's worked with DCC knows that you can have 2-bit addresses for locos or 3-bit addresses. You've got a coded addresses and so forth. So this address byte is 8 bits, but the first bit, if the first most significant bit is a 0, it knows it's just a basic address. If it's a 1, it knows it's either a accessory or it's an extended address. So, and then if it's got a 1 to start with and then the next bit is a 1, it knows it's an extended loco address. And there will, if it's an extended address, it knows it needs a second address byte. So this is very much how the DC packets work. The information is not held in discrete bytes, it's held in bits, and a lot of it is taking the bits to pieces, so that when it's coded, it's quite compact and short. And it's quite confusing to actually work out what is, how the addresses all mix and match together. And then having got an address byte, the decoder will know how to deal with it. It will look at it and say, if it's not my address, I will ignore it. If it's my address, I will deal with it. Except there are some 3 packets that affect everything. But one of them is an idle packet, and it's just there to sort of fill in. It doesn't do anything. There's a broadcast address. If that address bit is 8 zeros, it's a broadcast address, and every decoder should follow what it says. And this basically is used to do the stop all, where something's going wrong, you press the emergency button, broadcast address stops everything going. But it can also be used for slowing things down the lens automatic braking system uses that kind of that broadcast address to do extra things. So that's it. That can be done there. And you can have what they call a reset packet that goes out, that does things. So there's one or two of these broadcast packages that everything looks at. When you get to once it's got the address and a decoder knows that it's got to look at it, the next bit is the data bit. And the first part of the data bit is an instruction code. And there's 8 basic types of instruction. And then you've got the 5 bits for the data. But so if you have an instruction, which is the first 3 is an 011, which says we're going to set the forward speed, right? 5 bits will not hold, is not sufficient to do the full 128 speed steps. So it then knows that it's going to get a second data byte to work that out. So it's very, very involved. You can't just say, oh, that'll be the format, this. So that the decoders have to work out what's coming next by what they've already got and so forth. And then in order to give you an error checking, it does an exclusive OR of the address compared to the data, and then that's checked for an error checking. But because model railways are such a noisy environment, you've got a loco running down the track, sparking, arcing, all sorts of things going on. The decoder will not follow a single message. It normally will want 2 or 3 packets saying the same thing to know that it's actually got to do it. So these packets have to be timed within each other and everything else. So in the command station, there's a lot of timing controls going on to make sure that the packets are sent out in a sequence of packets that will all be obeyed. They will come timely and do all this. So it's there's a lot of timing things going on within the PIC there. And that is basically how it works. Is there any questions about the DCC packet side of things that somebody doesn't understand or would like to follow? Yeah.
Don, what
Yeah?
happens if what happens if it fails the XOR?
If it fails
Does
the
it just
XOR,
resend the message?
it will just, the decoder will just ignore it and wait for one that says a proper one. So usually, if it gets 2 that if the first one was garbled and it gets 2 that are correct one after another, it'll work on that. But it normally you'll get at least 3 packets sent. And that's all it can do. If it's not happy with it, it will just ignore it. And also, if you send it something that it can't do, it will ignore that as well. So if you send a message, send something that's trying to do something that a decoder won't do, it will just ignore it. It's set on that kind of way.
Thanks.
All right. Right. Now, for the opcodes, can I go on to opcodes? Is everybody happy?
And no more hands up.
Right. The opcodes, yeah. Now, the way I found into this is there's a developer's guide for CBus that's under the knowledge base on the thing, and it goes through how CBus works. And if we go down the pages, here, oops, right. So you've got a section here which is section 9 of the developer's guide, and it explains how the cabs talk to the CANCMD. Right now, for those of you that are familiar with CBus, you probably know about nodes and how they work and everything else. Normally, modules have a node identity that is used and so forth. But because the cabs need to be sort of treated as though they were just the same kind of thing, so that the CANCMD can recognize that they're cabs, they all use a fixed node number, which is OXFFFF. And that seems to work. And then you have next when you put fiber cab up, it can receive the CBus messages, but it doesn't send anything at the moment until it's got a session. So the first thing the cab needs to do to run something is to acquire a session with the CANCMD. And it does this. You can use an rlock command. And the format is given here, where you've got OX40 is the code for the rlock, which is a request loco. And then the next two chunks are the addresses. And the first byte will be all zeros if it's a short address. And then if it's a long address, it'll be using both bytes, and the range will go further. You can have the cabs can actually send a message for something from four zeros to 3FFF, which is well over 4 digits. It's 10,000 something. The NMRA says that the highest should be 10,239, but that'll actually goes more. And then if the loco is there and it's available, the command station comes back with a PLOC. So you get a code OXE1. You get a session, which is just a number, and then you get the addresses of the loco that you've requested. You get a speed direction, and you also get any inclination of what the command station thinks about the functions. And functions I'll come through in a minute, but basically, if the command station has been running that loco, it will know what it's set to, right? So if you have a loco that's been running, somebody's let go of it, and you take it over, the command station will come back with what speed it's going at and everything else. Then, but if it's a loco that's not been used before, obviously the speed is lower. Right. You also can, if there's no slots, you can get a message. But to be honest, the CANCMD2 should be able to control 32 locos, and I reckon there's very few layouts where you would actually want to have 32 locos running. It's quite a number, really. But apparently there are some of these big US ones where they're sort of up against that limit. If the loco is being if you've got a loco being used, you have a K-lock to release it, which you can do this. It's what's called dispatch. The trains keep moving and the command station will look after it, but it can then be acquired by a further cab. So if you've got two operators and you want to change from one to another, you could use it. One can release it, another one can then acquire it while the train's on the move. But if somebody hasn't released it, they've just left it sort of sat somewhere, you have another command, a G-lock, which can steal or share the session. So you have very similar to the requested, but there's a flag there that says whether you want to steal it, which means you take away their session, share it, where you can both send messages to the command station about that loco. So that's how that works. Other than the next thing you can get is we need to look at is this. You can change the speed range. There's one there, and then there's an odd thing here, which is the cab has to keep sending a message to the command station. So it sends a keep alive, which is just a dekeep message every so often, and the commands, it says once every 4 seconds, but I know that you can unplug the cab and have about 20 seconds. So once you stop sending a dekeep, it must set a timer off. And if you take too long walking about with your cab, trying to look for a socket, it would end your session. And then you can just send a simple message to say to increase the speed or change direction and so forth, which has got a code there. And then you get functions. Now, I explained when I was looking at the DC packets how it was often done with bits. Yeah. Well, when you do functions, you might think to yourself, I want to send function 1, I want to send function 2. DCC itself doesn't work like that. It sends a block of functions. So the packet that's sent to say activate the functions has to cover a range of them, and they're in groups to, you know, various groups of them. And those groups, you can get some odd things. If something has been left set on a decoder, the command station will not know when it acquires it. So if you change one in that group, right? So if say if F2 has been left set on from last time the thing was operating, and you want to set F3, the cab doesn't know that F2 has been set off. It will send a message for the group saying, well, look, we just want to do 3. So the bit that deals with F3 will be set to 1, but because it didn't know, it will send the bit as a 0 to F2, assuming it's off, and turn something off. So you may find that something you thought was on goes off. It's because it's done as groups. And that has to be done on any DC system, either has to be done in the command station to try and keep track of these functions, or it can be done in the cab. It's done in the command station here. I don't know. I think it may also try and keep a track of them in the cab as well, so that they both know what's going on. And there's also I mentioned that you've got an emergency stop the broadcast message. There's a code in the CBus protocol that the cab sends to say to the command station, issue this stop all. But there's also in a command that says, just stop this loco, and it sets the speed to 1 on the decoder. And if a decoder gets a message to say set the speed to 1, it knows that means it's just stop. Ignore any deacceleration, just stop. Whereas if you send a speed of 2 or 3 or something like that, it will just deaccelerate to it. So this is a very useful thing, is that rather than having to press the stop and stop everything on the layout, if your loco is going the wrong way, you can just press and it's going to hit something, you can just stop your loco. And it could be, you don't get that on all systems. It's quite good. And I won't go through all of these, but you can see there's and then there's the CV programming ones. And these are all covered in the opcodes. You don't really need to go through them all, but if you get problems or you ever want to start developing stuff yourself, it's all here in there. There's also an option where you can send commands that aren't covered, because you just simply ask through a CBus opcode, you send a command that's written out to go to a packet format to go to the command station, which just takes it and passes it on. And this is used, I think, more with things like JMRI, where it can actually want to send something straight directly through. But it's not something I would suggest you do lightly. If you don't know what you're doing with the packets, I mean, I showed you quite how complicated they can be. You could end up doing something that you didn't want to do. So it's there, but you need to know what you're doing before you try to do anything like that. The other thing is accessories. And the accessories are done just the same as any treated as far as the C-bus codes are concerned, just the same as operating things that you can do on C-bus devices. So a cab can tell the command station to operate a DCC decoder, but it could also that a cameo might operate a servo. The format is the same. It's an accessory on or an accessory off. So I presume that you've got to be careful about the number ranges for accessory decoders and command things. Now, I'm not familiar with the FCU and how you do all that. Some of you will know a lot more than me. But I do know that you can quite simply operate accessory things by this method. And also, if you need to set up an accessory decoder, most of them have the ability to learn. So like the lens accessory decoder, you press a button, put it in learning mode, you send the right message from the cab, and that goes forward to tell that, and then it's learnt to do it, and then you can just toggle the things. I'll come into it a bit more, but that's as far as we're looking at it on that side of things. So is there any query about opcodes in terms of what they do or what it's all about? Any questions? No, I managed to boggle you all, or either you all know it, or I managed to boggle you all. Right.
No, I think some of the things, Don, are they're all peculiar to C-bus, aren't they, or to the Merg system? Because I know they keep alive on some systems that probably not set at the same level, because you can walk around with an unplugged cab hand controller for quite a long time.
I mean, it may be you can walk around longer than it says, but the specified thing is you've got at least 20 seconds to re-plug it in. I don't know whether it will cut off after that, but that's what's guaranteed, kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, as I say, to operate it, you don't need to know about all this stuff, but and I'm just trying to give you an appreciation of how it works. And as you can see, I'm not going to walk through the software. You can imagine that if this is a bit boggling, trying to explain what it all did in software would be very confusing, because each one of these bits has to be passed to see what they mean and so forth. So there's an awful lot in the code there. Right, so I'll just go on to the next bit. Which is the CANCAB now.
Hi folks, just whilst we're waiting for Don to come back, I picked up a collection of bits the other day. I'm working my way through trying to fix various things, grabbing bits. I've got two chassis that I've no idea what they're for. I wonder if anybody recognises where they might have come from. I'll just do a display. So let's grab this over here. So I don't know whether you can see that. So it's a classic four wheels at each end, 2 bogies. It's looks like a Graham Farish type sort of thing. One of them's got a yellow buffer beam at the end. The other one's got a white sort of buffer beam at the end, and it's got the spring contact there. I don't know whether that's a coupling pocket. I've tried it on all the different bodies and things that I got with this, but I can't recognize it. They're a little bit short, I think, for the yeah, they're a little bit short to fit an intercity coach, and they're a bit too long to fit all the standard class diesel classes, you know, the 31s and 37s and all that sort of stuff. I wonder if anybody's got any ideas as to where they might, what body would normally go on that. It seemed to be standard Graham Farish, I think, looking at them, but I can't really tell. As I say, I'm just trying to make up various different working bits out of these. Anyone got any ideas?
Richard, a 33 or 73 is a shorter diesel, so maybe.
Right. Okay. I'll put that on my list of ones to look at and see whether. As I say, it's basically I've got a collection of about 30 bodies, and with various different, some working, some not working, some broken, some whatever, and I've been sort of working my way through. I think I should end up with about 3 or 4 reasonably working locos at the end of it, which makes me happy, but not particularly good condition or anything like that. But they'll be useful for little testing locos, things like that, and trundling around. Thanks. 33, or what was the other one?
73, maybe.
Ah, now I have had 73 here. So there's the 73. And I think you can probably see the overhang on the end of it. So it's not a 73.
Well, therefore 33 won't fit either.
Right, okay. So, because they're a bit shorter. As I say, it's not the 37s, it's not the 40. I've tried all the different bits and body shells that I've got here, and none of them quite fit. That's why I was intrigued to know which one it would have been. But thanks for the suggestion.
Richard, I came in on the tail end of that. You've covered all the normal ones, have you? 66 and 67 and 52.
I think I've got a, yeah, there's a 66 that came with the stack, and it's a bit too, the 66 is too, it's about the right length, but the 66 that I've got here has got a big collection of gubbins in the end of it, which means it doesn't drop over it. So it needs something a bit longer than a 66. So what was the other one you said?
67, but I think that's the same size
Right.
as 66 lengthwise. I'm not sure.
But, yeah, I think there's enough bits generally to make some working things out of it, and sort of enough bogies and things like that to oil them up, grease them up. I'm not sure which to use on the. Anybody suggestions on greasing up the bogies on these things, on these diesels, 6-wheel diesels, which have got gear wheels within them? A little
for engage.
Engage, yeah.
Yeah. You use grease?
I have. I've used nothing at the moment. I was.
You don't use heavy gear oil then?
No. I think that's probably a bit over the top.
No. They do some model railway heavy gear oil.
Oh, I see. Okay.
They do a light oil and they do a heavier oil for gears.
Okay, yeah. I've seen people use that. I'll have a look. So oil rather than grease. I think grease would probably be a bit stiff on it.
I don't really have a lot of experience of Engage. Olivia's got a load of Engage stuff, but they seem to have about 400 gears inside them, don't they?
That's what I'm finding. And another thing I'm just trying to do is to solder up the little tiny NEM 6-way pins for the a few of them have got the little tiny, I don't know whether you can see that there. It's a little tender drive. No, it's not picking up.
Oh yeah.
But it's got the little 6-way sockets on it. So I bought some from Merg, the little 0.05 spacing. But I'm struggling to get my fingers bending the wires correctly and holding, and they're just a bit too close together. I can do it surface.
What you need is you need a granddaughter or something to do it for you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to meet at the moment, or not allowed to.
No.
Next week, maybe.
No, they'll all be contaminated next week. They've gone back to school.
That's the theory, yeah. One of the goodie I acquired this week, just arrived yesterday, was a ferrule crimp tool. I don't know whether you saw the guy on the group. So basically and I just got this. Again, you can't, it's a good thing there. Let's see. This one's a 6-way one, which sort of seems to go good. I was just wondering whether there's no indications on how to use it at all. And I did a few things. Do you just squeeze until it feels about right, or do you just squeeze all the way home? And then that's a question of adjusting the settings, or, I mean, I've used
all the way home.
All the way home, yeah? Okay.
Squeeze it until it releases on spring.
Okay. I did it early on, I did it on one of those, and it sort of basically cut the tiniest ones. It cut them into sort of distant. So I think I may have had it tightened up a bit too much. I'll have another go on that.
Is it just is it a graduated adjusted screw? Does it not do it for certain?
It's just got
sizes.
It's just got the 6. No, this one does all. It's not. It's got a little adjustment on the side there. I don't know if you can see just up here, which is just adjustment for strength. But the actual.
Oh yeah, so it is graduate.
Yeah, but the center of it is just. It's just a single thing. There's no. It's not like the other crimp tools where you have different slots to put them into.
All right.
Maybe just experiment with it, because I mean it goes from 10 gauge. It goes from 10 gauge right down to 22 gauge, which is sort of quite a. Oh, this is a rubbish camera. But basically, about 2 mil up to about 6 mil. So in fact, 1 mil up to about 6 mil. But
you may need to put it on a different setting for each size of crimps. You adjust the screw round for each size of crimp you want to do.
All right, okay. Well, I'll definitely experiment with that. As I say, I managed to do a few, and it's sort of it seemed to work quite nicely when I on the tiny ones. I did a few experimental ones, and it seemed to do what I wanted to do, which is just to make it so all these pluggable connectors and everything else that I'm using, it's just a bit neater and everything else. Stops them breaking. The wires keep breaking all the time otherwise. So anyway, thanks for that. I'll let Don get back to his talk.
This is the circuit. This is on the back of the build instructions. So if you want to find it, and it is a circuit diagram schematic for the CANCAB, and it of the top right hand corner you can see the plus 12 volt line coming in, and then the CAN H and CAN L and the 0 volts. So this is the input. This is the connection. The nice curly cord you get with the thing. But that comes up through the nice curly cord. So that's just your you feed in from the external world into the cab, and you've got a 78L05 regulator and an MCP. I can't read the number on that.
Dom, we got a request. Could you,
What?
Dom, we got a request. Can you enlarge it slightly, because we can't really see it so well.
Yeah, I can.
That's a bit better.
Can you? The trouble is, some bits disappear off the edge there, I think.
Yeah.
The words.
Go down one.
Yeah.
If you can go down one to 100%, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, you could just about see what's on that side.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Is that better? And the MCP 2551 is the transceiver that you get with all C-bus devices that takes the CAN messages and sends them on in a form that the PIC can deal with. The voltage regulator is there to drop the 12 volt supply down to 5 volts for the PIC, and that comes along the top there into the PIC. This, on the right, you have a line of connections there. These are going to the LCD. So those connections there all go to the LCD display. And there's also a little bit down here, down below that, which is not attached to anything else. And that's the voltage regulator, which does the LCD contrast. All right. So it's not, it's just, if anybody's ever put one together, you know that when you first set it up, you can't see anything on the screen. You adjust the contrast and all of a sudden you can actually start to see something. So that's what's that little bit down there that's separate. Right, the heart of the thing is this PIC, which is an 18F2480, and this push button array, which are the things to send them in. Interestingly, some of these push button lines are shared with the display. Now, because the coding is written in assembler, it's not easy to work out quite what's going on. But from other work I've done, I presume he is defining these one way for the display and another way to do something else. So I presume it just kind of briefly, while it's looking at at the keys, just cuts off the effect of the display and so forth, which is a bit hard to follow in trying to go through assembler to understand it. I don't know if any of you are, well, how many of you are familiar with how key displays work, but usually what you do is you set you set the one lot as the columns one way and rows another way. So you could set, say, the columns as a low output, and then you first of all set column 1 as a low output, and then do a read on each of the rows in turn, and it'll just pick out if one of them's operated, there will be a connection, so it will pick up that low through the other, and then you go through in turn doing them. And so having done one column, you do the next one, you do the next one, it's quite possible doing this to read either single keys. So you find a key that's making, a push button that's making, and just sort of stop and analyze that. Or you can go through and find out if there's multiple key presses. Now, the CANCAB just basically uses single key presses. But you can do things like that. But it has to be regularly scanned, because it's, unless Mike has found a way of putting an interrupt that will tell it that has any key been pressed, it's difficult to have a way of noticing it. So the one where I've been working on doing this, I've done it so that it just regularly scans these to see if any key presses have been made. And then I also have to make sure, you also have to make sure that you're not reading one key press as twice. You know, if you scan too quickly and somebody holds the key a bit long, it's it could think that you mean a second press and so forth. So I've not had any problems using the CANCAB where, you know, you hold a key a bit too long, hold a button down too long, and it thinks you mean something else and that. So as to be expected, Mike's got it pretty well sussed out. And then on this side, you've got, on the far left, you've got a potentiometer, which goes to an analog input on the pick, and that will set the speed. So it's just simple. You have to be a bit circumspect with how you deal with this, because if you send a message every time it changes, the speed that this thing can pick it up, you could end up firing a message at every single step. You know, if you're going from, say, speed 10 to speed 70, you don't want it to fire off a message at speed 11, speed 12, speed 13, all the way up. You want to be able to get it to just send one when you've got there. So the coding in this has to be take into account that you could be moving it. So otherwise, you just start sending such a barrage of stuff down the C-bus, and then the poor old CANCAB has got to cope with it. Then you've got two LEDs there. One is for the forward direction and one is for the reverse direction. And one of these buttons, that one there, the bottom left one, does direction, but you have a visual indication which way it's set. This is quite useful when you, like, say, like shunting or something, you know, and if you shunt and then you're done doing the couplings and that, it reminds you which way the loco is going to go when you turn the speed up again. And then you've got a small sounder there as well, which lets you know if something's not right. And just a little crystal down there to do the timing. So it's a fairly simple diagram, but still quite complex to program. Is there any queries about what's in the schematic?
Doesn't look like it.
No. That's fine. So the next thing that I want to look at is the build instruction. So seeing as I've got this one up here, I'll go up and go through one or two things on the CANCAB. So that's the start of the build instructions. It's all fairly simple. I'm not going to, I'm not going to go through every single bit in it. Preparation of it is quite fine, and it's got here about opening the mount. It says there, like, the 6 larger plated through mounting holes would benefit from gently opening out to 2.1 millimeter. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't seem to be, I haven't got 2.1 millimeter drills mostly, because I use something else. I did mention this on before on one of our coffee mornings, I think. But for those that don't know, if I can just, I don't know whether you can see in this little picture that, yeah. Can you see on that small picture?
Yep.
That's a jeweler's brooch type of thing, 5-sided brooch. And I find for opening a hole up to sort of any size, it says they're opening up blocked holes and that, they're very useful for that. And it's very useful for modeling generally, I find. You want to, you've got a kit and you want to open the hole up on the buffer bit to put the buffers in or something. These are tapered, so you can just get it just right and use. So I would. The bigger ones are a little expensive, but to be honest, I find they're so useful. I would recommend them to anybody. The small ones are quite cheap, and you should have one in your kit, whatever. So that's, and it goes through opening various holes up and things. But there's one that doesn't say at this stage. At this stage, they're telling you before you've got any components in there, and you're going to create dust. And then further down, you get to this one when you've already started fitting things, which is fitting this VR1, and you have to cut bits off of it and bend the legs over and things. But more importantly, there's a boss on it. I don't know whether you can see clearly. There's a bit of a boss at the bottom of that black knob bit. This is the speed knob. And on mine, certainly, that was quite a bit bigger than the hole in the board. So I would suggest that when you're doing the first stage, before you start actually fitting anything to it, you just open the hole out so that would go in at that stage. And because by the time I did it, I got all bits on it, and then you got all the dust from creating that, and it was a nuisance. So that's my advice there. Surface mount components. Are you all happy with surface mount components? It was my first experience with surface mount components, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but what I did do is, because I wasn't certain whether I'd done them my first time, and I wasn't certain, I used a test meter, and having done something, I looked to see if I could find a pad either side of something. Say I soldered in a resistor. I was looking to find something either side, or if it was a capacitor, I would put the one probe right next to it on the top of the metal bit of the capacitor, and then find a pad where it went through to, just to prove to myself that there was a connection. And I did find one or two that needed to be redone where I hadn't. It looked all right. There seemed to be solder there, but there was solder sat on the end of the component that wasn't connected to the solder sat on the pad. And but by using a meter, and it's, because you can't see that clearly, but what's happening underneath something. So I found it useful to do that. But you may be so blasé about surface mount soldering you don't need to do it. But it's not a bad thing to go around checking a few things out. So if you go back to, if you think about the circuit diagram, if you know there's a connection from one device to another, to say one of the pins of the PIC for the feed in or the naught supply, you can actually test that with a meter before putting the PIC in, which is a bit reassuring. And you can also check whether there's any, if you've had to try to clear a whisper between two tabs, you could check with a meter and check it's gone, because sometimes they can. It seems to be a real problem, because not that I had great difficulties, but I've seen on the forum a number of people, and they say, oh, it's gone wrong. And then you find out that they haven't soldered something properly, or they've been told to go back and do it again. And when they do, they find it works all of a sudden, and you think to yourself, yeah, you could have sorted that out yourself, really. It's worth doing. It does take quite a bit with this thing of going through, checking that everything's going to line up properly. It's something worth taking your time with to get everything done there. But the instructions are good. I mean, apart from that one bit I mentioned they didn't do, the instructions are quite good. Yeah, the RJ7 with this little daughter board, fiddly, but yeah, take your time and take care doing it, and it's all right. Yeah, I remember when we talked about this at one of the mornings, somebody said that these weren't quite aligned with the box and that. And I did actually find one or two of them didn't seem to be 100% aligned. And I simply got one of these, my broaches out, and just gently eased round it, and it was been fine, no problems. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I really need to say on there. If anybody's got problems or queries, your best bet is to ask before you get yourself too far down. But I quite enjoyed the build of it and that. Oh, the other one there's to watch is there's the voltage regulator, which is quite a small surface mount thing. The center bit underneath is connected to the ground plane in the board, and that needs a little bit more oomph to get it soldered and things like that. So make sure that's done properly. Yeah. Yeah. Any queries on that? Anybody else found something that I've missed?
Tom, what sort of solder did you use? Did you use solder paste or an ordinary solder?
For the SMD soldering, they send you a little bit in the kit. Well, they did my kit.
Yeah, that's multi-core, isn't it?
Yeah, and but it's got a bit of silver in it, I think.
Yeah, make it flow a bit easier.
And I used that. Well, it's also got the advantage. It's very fine. I mean, my normal solder is sort of that stuff, you know, which is probably bigger than the ends of the things. And the other is, if I've got it somewhere, a bit of it. It's good solder, so that's what I use to do the SMD bits. And I've got a Hakko soldering iron, and I've got both 1mm and 0.5mm chisel ends. So generally, I found the 1mm work better because it's got a bit more. It gets the heat there quicker. The 0.5mm is fine if you've got sort of very small ones, but despite the temperature being, I run it to about 350. If you're trying to solder anything that needs a bit of heat there, it's obviously takes the time to transfer it through a 0.5mm chisel. Yeah, that's probably one of the best things, though, is having a decent bit of soldering kit. Yeah.
Don, I've got a query on CANCAB. Unlike Paul, I've only got one locomotive, which is working fine. But I hope within the next 10 years to finish the model I started 10 years ago. And I want to make that DCC. How easy is it to change the, because the standard number is 3, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you change that within CANCAB?
You can actually, and this is something I was going to come on to later on, but I'll mention it now. Is I mentioned with the CANCMD about whether you can use the traction or you've got to take a link out to change the traction output to a programming track, right? So the temptation is, if you want to program a loco number, right, to change the loco number to a long address, to do it on the main rather than do it on a program track. And there is provision to change an address on the main. The only problem is that there has been a report of it not doing it correctly, right? And Mike Bolton is aware that this. I think Mike Bolton actually checked and found that it may have been the make of decoder, but he did find that this happened. And I know that he and Andrew Crossland were looking into it. The possibility is that when I was explaining about the packets and how it does the addresses, in order to allow you to change CVs on the main track, it has to be done in address mode. So you have to send the package, has to have the address of the decoder. Where it's changing 2 different CVs, it looks like it might be that having changed one of them, it won't let you change. It won't let you change the other. It won't let it change the other. and so it ends up, or it has problems changing the other, so it ends up with the wrong number in it. But it's not a thing that goes wildly wrong. You can always do it as a program track, and you just say to it, change this loco. If you have one loco on the program track, right, you can just tell the decoder, I want you to be address 1214, and it will be 1214. Yeah, it's not a difficult job at all. And to be honest, if you're messing about with changing some of those CVs, it's in my view is you need to be concentrating on what you're doing, and there's no reason to be running trains while you're changing CV, doing service mode programming. So I would suggest you just change it to that track. And the other thing is, when you're doing anything on the programming track, only have one loco on it, because you don't want to start inadvertently changing another loco. If you send it, if you just say, just change the address to, 1214, and there's another loco sat there, it'll change to 1214. Yeah. But it's really nothing to worry about, Ian. It's quite simple.
Okay, thank you.
But I just felt I should mention, something I was going to mention anyway, is that if that possibly happens, it may be the decoder that's not doing it the way the other. So many different variables, but if done in a programming track, it will always be all right. Okay.
Yeah, when you say a programming track, you mean a separate bit of track connected?
It doesn't have to be.
Oh, right.
Right. If you have that layout, a layout, yeah, and you've got the connected, you're not using a booster, you're just using the traction output on the CANCMD, yeah. You just pull link 7 out of your CANCMD,
yeah,
and it then becomes a programming track. But that's the whole layout, which is why I was saying make sure there's no other locos on there.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Right, but if you're going to use a booster, the booster runs the main track, and then the traction output is left as a programming track with no link in, and that then is ideally you can have it connected to a bit of track on your workbench. I mean, some people like to have a bit of a siding on the layout or something, but I don't see any point. Have it on the workbench, and then you can just pick up the loco and put it back, and you're not going to get anything muddled up then. So what are you building?
It's a DJH BR standard locomotive class 4.
Yeah.
I'm really
is this an O gauge one?
Okay, no, 00.
00.
And I've got stuck now on the motion. I can't. I think I know how it goes, but it's proving difficult.
Yeah. Well, that'll be fine on the to run on DCC.
Oh yeah, I've tested it with the chip and everything, just to make sure that it would understand the commands and everything, and so it's working. I've taken it all apart again because I've still got to finish the build. So I know it works. It's just changing that number for the standard number of 3 to something else.
It's not a problem. I mean, I've used it to do. There's a little Thames there. I mean, that's the last one I did, and that's 57. So, sorry, let me sit on there. I've done that one recently with it. I've done the dock tank in the back. The dock tank in the back. It was set to be just number 5 from when I originally had the lens compact, and I thought, well, I better give it its proper number now, so I made it 1365. No trouble at all.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right. So any more on the build MSAG CANCAB? No. Right. Just to go back to the CANCMD, while we're talking about the build instructions, I would say the CANCMD is one of the easiest kits to build, really. It's quite nice and simple. There wasn't anything too much on there. The only things to watch, you've got some heat sinks on there. Can you see this? Can you see that photo, all right? No?
Yeah, we can see the photo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I wasn't sure because I've changed something. I wasn't sure whether it's gone. Yeah, you've got some heat sinks on there. If you're putting this in a metal box and you're using the box as the heat sink, one of these is the different polarity to the others. So you've got to make sure you've got the little insulation bit fitted in. So that's the thing in there. And if you're applying, you may want to consider doing the other one if you've got a lot going on there. But if it's in free air, it seems to work. Mine sort of just sat on there. I should probably just mount it up underneath the baseboard when I'm ready, or underneath the control box, but make sure it's got plenty of air around it so the heat sinks work properly. And that's really all I've got to say. I don't know, has anybody else ever found problems with trying to put together the CANCMD? Yeah, no, I didn't think you would do.
Just wondered what the difference was between the CAN command and the CAN command 2.
You don't know what the difference was?
Yeah,
sorry?
What's the difference? Yeah.
The original one had an AC input. That's probably one of the major differences. It also had, if I go down to the diagram, yeah, there was also a link there, I think it is, or no, a link going around somewhere there. There's another link. Oh yeah, and into this output to the connections on the side. So yeah, that one there it is. There's a link in there that you put in if you want it. Don't know why, but you don't really need to bother with that. Yeah, and the main thing is you've got an AC supply until you've got a rectifier and all that. And I think that was the main differences really. The firmware is the same as far as I know. Now I have looked at the earlier one because somebody had a problem with it not working. They'd had it sat in the cupboard for however long, and we were able to get on the forum. We were able to get him sorted out. So yeah.
Don, someone's asking what does switch 1 do?
Oh, that one down there.
Yeah.
Is it that's to tell the FCU. Now I've never played with FCU, those people who use it for C-bus devices will know more about it, but it's just to, you press that to connect up to tell us, so it tells the CU, FCU who it is and that. And the other thing with, I haven't gone into at the moment with the CANCMD is connecting it up to a USB 4, right? No problems at all. It works fine. You can use the 12-volt output that goes to the cab there on the left-hand side. You can use that to power up the USB 4, which is quite handy to do it when you're testing and so forth, if you haven't got your computer connected up. But if you set this, but you can set the USB 4 to either take that power or to work with the USB. Working with a USB feed is fine with it. It works. The only thing is you've got to make sure that that's connected through. Otherwise, you can get a problem with if the naught isn't connected through to the USB, connected up to USB 4. I know somebody has had a problem where the computer went to sleep and it did something. But it's actually, in my view, if you were starting this from new, it would be easier to build a CAN-CMD and a USB 4 and just check the working of the CAN-CMD with JMRI, which is easy to do, so that you know it's working before you do the CAN. If you just build a CANCAB and a CAN-CMD and then they're not working together, it's not so easy to know which is the fault and so forth. So, and it's also the JMRI through the CANCAB has got things like Decoder Pro, where you can have a setting you want for your decoders and just download that to do all the CVs. If you're going to start messing around with changing speed curves or anything like that, it's probably easier to do it with JMRI than it is to do it with a CANCAB and having to put everything in individually. So that's a thing. Right. So I'll move on from there to look at the next one. This is Technical Bulletin DCC21, which is the connecting up to a layout and to a network and so forth. This is a little bit out of date, this TB, which seems to be a thing, but you've got here the basic setup. You've got a CANCAB, you've got the J22 connector, which is just where that plugs into your command station. But you can see it's out of date because it says 15 volts AC into the command CMD. And that connects to a layout. It also shows you can have more connections and so forth. This is just a schematic diagram of how you can connect it up. And also an expanded system, you can have a number of handsets. You can have the CAN USB 4 PC JMRI. You can have several boosters, each with their own power district. And you can have a programming track off the CAN CMD. And that's one of the things, is that although it's useful for a very small layout and cost competitive. It's also very cost competitive when you start looking at the fact that it can run a huge layout. And you know that will work. It's scalable from small to large layouts. We don't need to have different ones. The only thing that there is available is Pete Brownlow has come up with what he calls a CAN-CSB, which is basically the CAN-CMD2, but it's got a built-in 3 amp booster on it. And that is an option. And basically it's the same firmware basically as it, but it is in there. But it's not that much of a saving compared to the just buying one booster, really, you know, to go with your CAN-CMD. Right. So that is, anyway, that is the document. As I say, it's long out of date, and I'm planning to make some recommendations on that, because I have an issue with, I think if Merg starts changing kits and then users that are trying to get them sorted out can look at TBs and get the wrong information. They've got to go and find an amendment somewhere that isn't necessarily held with a TB. No, I don't think that's a very helpful thing at all. And I'll come on to the instructions in a minute, the user guide in a minute, which has got the same problem. Right, so that's that one. Right, this is the other technical bulletin DCC 20.01, I think it is. And it's a user guide, right? So it's not just a technical bulletin, it's something that everyone that's got the a CANCAB and a CAN-CMD as well, they should have a copy of this. Again, it's out of date, and I will be trying to get something sorted on that, because I don't think that's right. So that goes through the basic bit about setting it up. Again, the supply information is a bit funny, and it's also got the basic diagrams in there. Right. It's saying there about, it says here, you see, you can't use the output stage of this CAN-CMD as a mini booster and a service programmer simultaneously. It's got to be one or the other, but it will do both, but only one at a time. And tells you how to adjust the voltage of the thing and set the things I've been into. And then it goes through the operations of it. And I'll get down there. Right, so handset startup. Most of you would be familiar with this, I expect, but it comes up with Merg cab version, and it tells you which firmware version you're looking at. So it's on there, and then the first thing you need, it will come after, that will come up for about 3 seconds or so, and then you press the loco button, and up comes select loco. You enter the numbers you want in and press enter, and if it's got it, back comes display with a number and a 0 to show that it's got the speed. If the loco was one already running, that could be higher. Yeah. If when you start it up, you get the beep. It just gives you a little beep to let you know it's got it. If the beep carries on and the display doesn't change, turn your speed knob down to 0. So it's to stop you selecting loco with the speed knob halfway up, and immediately the loco takes off like a scalded cat. So that if it does that, that's all it is. And then you've got the addresses. It goes into the addresses there, right? If you put in 1 or 21 or something like that, it will be treated as a short address. If you put in 021, it will be treated as a long address. So you don't need to put in those long addresses because it can handle the short ones. The only time you might want to do it is if you've got 2 locos that were numbered 13 on the side of the cab. You could make one 013, or also the consists share the same numbers as the short addresses. So you may want, you could want to, if you chose to, you could put the numbers as long addresses by putting a 0 in front. I wouldn't bother, but it's there. And then I won't go through everything, but it's worth reading. I mean, you can pick it up on the cab and work through it, but it is worth reading through this and having a bit to hand, because it's a good guide to how it should work. Right. And it explains all the bits that we've talked about. I haven't really talked about consists. I don't know whether how many people actually bother with consists and things in this country. It's really useful if you're model American railways, where they have an A unit and a B unit, or they have these multiple lash ups and that, and they are connected together to work as one in reality. They've got special jumpers through and that, so there's one driver in there. I don't know whether we do that in this country. I don't know much about these diseasal things, but if I was double heading locos, I would probably leave them as 2 locos and use 2 cabs as a driver. But you can put them together and just do it on the one. So that's the options there, and it goes through it all. Right. I mentioned about the functions there, so it tells you about a bit about the function range and how you can get to the higher function ranges. So you've got different buttons to use. An FR, you've got a different button there. Oh, you're going to pull off, aren't you? No. Yeah, you've got some, but these FR1 and FR2 at the bottom there are to go to different number ranges for the functions. There's also, you can set a memory or toggle function, right? And as far as I can make out, for understanding it, the DCC system only understands functions as toggles, right? It does, you set it to 0 for off or 1 for on, and it will just change, right? But you can set in the cabs, you can tell it that you want, say, F3 to be a momentary one, which means that you hold it down for as long as you want it to be working, and when you release it, it will come off. And I think that will do. The way I've done it on the one my cab I'm building, is to you recognise that it's acting as momentary, and you send one off. But there is a problem, particularly if it's a club layout, or if you have your mate round, right? You may have set F5 to be a momentary one, right? And he's got it set to do something like a headlamp, right? Or something like that. You will end up driving his loco on your layout, having to hold F5 down to keep the light on, because it works by button, not by loco. It's nothing to do with the decoder or anything else. All the cab is saying is, I will treat that button as being a momentary one, and as soon as it's released, I will turn that function off. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's something that I didn't realise till I started trying to write code to do one.
That would apply to DCC uncouplers.
Yeah, it applies to anything that's momentary. I've worked out my own way of dealing with it. If somebody's interested, I'll tell you what I'm trying to do on the one cab I'm building. So, and then here it goes programming, right? And you see here, look, it says about on the main programming, about changing the CVs. Not all decoders may allow you to change some CVs using this method. So this is how you can change a CV on the run, but on the main layout. But as it says, a decoder may not like it. And to set a long address, it says to set the long address of a loco in one stage, but not all decoders will permit you to set the long address on the main. So that's where I know there's been a problem with a decoder. It allowed it, but it got it wrong. So, which is probably worse. But if you go further down to service mode programming, right, you can read and set CVs there, right? And you'll get this little thing. You either get what they call an ACK when it's responded, or a no ACK if there's nothing there. And that's where the CANCMD is able to talk to the decoder on the program track. And you can put in a program address and give it an address when you don't know what the address is. So if you had a loco that didn't seem to be responding, you can just use the instructions there to tell it to change the address. Accessory devices. To operate a CBus accessory device, if you press enter, right, when the cab was not expecting you to do another enter. So if you were doing something and it was waiting for an enter to say, right, that's the loco number, enter, this wouldn't work. But if you're just running along and not doing anything, you press enter and it brings up a message format, which is you get a top line, which is the current loco and the speed it's going at. And then underneath, it's just got accessory number, right? And you can put in a number there for the accessory decoder and press it. But it doesn't have to be an accessory decoder. You press then, to send it, you then press the consist button. But it can be either a message going out to CBus for something on one of the modules, or it can be going to the CAN command to do that. So, but on these instructions, it tells you that you can't do decoders. It says that present handset can only control mobile decoders. That is no longer true. It does work. It works exactly the same way as it tells you to do for a CBus accessory. And you put it in there and bang, it goes off. And once you've got the number in, you can, if you press consist, it will toggle it back and forwards. So if you were using an accessory to do something, so if it was an uncoupling ramp as an accessory, you would do it that way as an accessory, not as a loco decoder. Yeah. Actually, I suppose you probably could do either. I mean, it's just a case of which decoder you buy and what it thinks it is. And then on here, it's got about connecting it up to a computer to control it. And again, it's out of date because the things have changed. But when you get into your USB, if you're using Windows 10, mine just spotted that it was a Merg USB 4 and set it up. And then you can you download JMRI onto your computer, and there's an option in JMRI which tells you to the system you want to connect to, and you tell it you want to connect to Merg, and it will just do the business. And then you can use a throttle to start a loco up. You can use Panel Pro to set up to control accessories. You can do all sorts of things. It's not really the time and place to go here, but it does work quite effectively. The CAN CMD has got a lot of will work quite well with JMRI, and people like Paul probably can automate things through JMRI has scripts and things that will work through. Now, the only other problem that I'm aware of is that there seems to be that you can, under certain circumstances, get a buffer overload on the CAN CMD, where we think it's because there's been so much stuff sent from JMRI through a computer, can run pretty fast, and it can be sending out messages faster through scripts and that than the CAN CMD can analyze them, and it can jam up. It doesn't cause a major headache, and that you normally just reset the CAN CMD and back it goes and things, but it is something that has been happened, and it's something that the developers are aware of, and will probably look to do it. I think discussions were going on about whether they should just busy up the CAN bus so it couldn't get through, or whether they should try and sort something out elsewhere. But that's not something that stops the average user. It's just that it's a possibility. Well, that really completes what I wanted to say today. So I'll just throw it open now to anybody with questions about anything other than the future state of the finances in this country, really.
What finance? Don,
I'm just wondering.
command.
Us pensioners being the only people with any money left, as far as I can work out, I'm just wondering how we're going to pay for it all.
Yeah, as a pensioner, we're not really worried, are we?
No, I know. That's why I worry. Well, that's what worries me. We're the only people who've got money at the moment.
Yeah. Don, question.
Yeah.
On the CAN command,
Yeah.
you can use booster. You can use a booster of any type.
Yeah, I mean,
just a Merck one.
No, it should work with commercial boosters. You can't. I don't. There's been no reports of it not working with any of them, but how well it works with some of. You may find that some of the things with the lens ones, they all shut down. If one of them shuts down, there's a link goes through. Things like that may not work, but the booster itself will work fine.
Yeah.
And similarly, you can use the Merck booster with any command station.
Yeah, with the lens booster,
Yeah, go on.
It's an option you have to set to do that. By default, they don't shut down. You have to make the connection, don't you? So it's only if you, for some weird reason, you want the whole layout to shut down. Well, you've probably got a load of boosters for making districts, so you don't want them to shut down, do you?
Well, actually, the instructions suggest that you do want to make them shut down. Or at least they did when it first came out. That's what they suggested.
Yeah. Obviously, they haven't played around with a big layout.
No. But yeah.
Yeah. So
anything else?
So basically, we could pick up all the boosters we've already got and probably connect them together, because it's only a DCC signal, isn't it, that's going out?
Yeah. You have to make sure you know the polarity of the boosters. The only other issue you might get is if you have a command station with an inbuilt booster and you try to use it with a Merck booster, there could be, and you're using you can't use if you use the output of another booster to go into one, you could have a timing problem.
Yeah.
Because they would not be in sequence. And so that's the only sort of danger you've got. And then when you're going over, if they're not in time, hopefully it would be, one would be 0 and one would be 0. But you could get a situation where they're opposite polarities as a loco went over, and there'd be a nice big spark on the wheels. Yeah, but if you've got an existing booster, it should work fine with it.
Good.
Have I boggled you all, or just this thing? Well, when's you going to come up with something new? No, have I covered what you wanted, Paul? What was one?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah, and more. Yeah, no one's got any more questions for Don? No.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine, Don.
Yeah. So if anybody has any issues in the future, feel free to discuss them with me.
Oh yeah, all the arrows are going to be pointing to you, Don.
Oh well.
Did you find it a reasonable task to go and investigate? And obviously, you've built them before, so you've got an interest.
Well,
in using them, but
I'm actually interested in developing a cordless cab.
Yeah.
Right. And as what I've done first of all is I've developed a cab that will work with a DCC++, because that one talks in terms of it just uses serial coding, and I can understand, and I could get to and understand the cab code to know what the command station code to know what I was doing. I've got two things I want to do. One is I want to put in a cordless link. Now, Wi-Fi is problematic at exhibitions and things. So I'm looking at using a 433 megahertz link to do it. So I want to do that. And I also want to make it work with the CANCMD. So I've got to sort out, I could just make my cab have a link to a base station that then converted the message to the CANCMD opcodes to go out. Or I could put in my cordless cab, put the transceiver in there, and then send the opcodes and that over a cordless link. I haven't worked out quite doing it that way, but I've done the basic cab. I've understood now how to program a cab and get it to put out the messages and so forth. And I started looking at the keypad things, but it wouldn't tell me what I wanted to know. So I've chucked it out and written my own to read the keys and things like that. So that made life for me, because I've been looking at all this stuff. It made it very much easier for me to do this, because I'd taken the lid off things and looked at them. If I was doing this without having done that, it would have been quite a bit of work researching it all. But I've done the research for my own benefit.
Yes, I mean this is what we said originally. You need to have an interest in that particular module, etc.
Yeah.
In order to be able to delve that deep, really.
Yeah. and be interested in the problems that people raise up as well. You know, I mean, if somebody raises an issue, I'm interested in, is that an issue, what it does and all that. They're all guinea pigs.
Nobody got any more questions? Just a request here that anyone who's listening, we need some more people to step forward with some focus on various kits. We're looking to fill up March onwards, so that they won't necessarily all be Zoom meetings. If we get together, we might be able to get together at St James's. I reckon 2024, but Tony thinks it might be a bit earlier. Yeah, so we could be getting together in the Yeovil group, but we are still going to try and video or record somehow the meetings that we have at St James, where we've got some sort of presentation, so that people who can't actually get to the Yeovil meetings can catch up online. Okay, we're gonna finish the meeting a little bit earlier. Thank you, Don, for all your hard work.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, you can do.
I was going to say to Don, if you haven't already bought your 433 meg modules, you
Yeah.
should be able to get a transmit receive pair, but be careful where you buy them from. The cheap Chinese ones might fall foul of the EMC regulations if they haven't been approved.
Right.
There are regulations relating to what you can and can't transmit on that
Yeah.
frequency. They're used for, typically used for the your key fobs for the cars at that frequency.
Yeah, yeah. The there's several ones. There's the LoRa ones, which are long range, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's the short range ones, which are the key fobs. But the one I'm looking at is there's an HC12.
Yeah, I think that's a relatively standard one. The LoRa is actually long range, but it's a low frequency. It's a low data rate.
Yeah, yeah.
Very quick.
But the HC12 is the one that I'm looking at, which is.
Yeah, I think so. It's just being slightly wary of where you buy them. It's just my professional EMC hat on. It's just that I know that sometimes some things turn up which are supposedly approved and aren't. CE does not always mean it conforms to European standards.
Yeah.
Our joke at work is it means China export.
I normally assume anything from China has just been, they just copied the logos.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily.
Been true of Apple phone.
Yeah, they don't necessarily copy the certification requirements.
Yeah. The Apple phone chargers are one of the truest ones that explode in the power sockets and leave live pins sticking up because they've not done they've not put the proper circuitry in them. That's been a well-known one for safety aspect of things that they're just not safe. They're cheap because Apple priced them so highly. People look to buy cheap ones, and you buy a cheap one, you're likely to have a problem with it.
I've seen some terrifying reports of cheap soldering stations. You know, where
Not seen anything of those, but yeah.
Oh no, there's some of them where there's bits of that bits of live sort of things in places you wouldn't expect and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Or it starts melting. Things like that. But yeah, I mean, one of these things, I've actually got a cordless connection that could be used with lens, and as far as which was supplied by ESU, and as far as I know, it's illegal, which is why they took it off the market because it was the range wasn't available to them that it uses, the frequency range.
Yes, they've used perhaps an American frequency range instead of the European.
Yeah, but there again, if where I live, I mean, if I'm just doing things, I doubt if it's going to affect anything very much.
Yeah.
No, but you can have the radio agency knocking on your door asking you why you're using an unauthorised transmitter.
I tell them it's the big one.
And finding you appropriately.
I tell them it's the big one down the road that's causing the bother. we got two dirty grey aerial masts visible from the window.
Yeah.
It's probably those aerial masts that are being interrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, but it depends how much power you're putting out. There's on the HC12, you've got a setting for the power output, and you're not supposed to go over a certain power rating for it's for use for control devices and things like that. You're only allowed a limited power output. You're not allowed to put out the maximum power.
No. But I believe there are places where some of the car systems get interfered with by a local repeater for something else.
Yeah.
The AA constantly calls people who can't get their cars to unlock or to move because they find when they got in, lock the door. When they move away from it, they then can't unlock it because the local transmitters just swamp the receiver. And it's not actually illegal problem. It's actually just the fact that it's just the distance. It's just too close, and it just swamps it. Even though it's not actually it's not a legal frequency. It just overwhelms the receivers because they're close-ish frequencies.
Yeah. Yeah. But I know with trying to use Wi-Fi at exhibitions, people have found it absolutely hopeless.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi is there's more and more going on Wi-Fi because I think one of the problems is that everybody's got their smartphones, and it automatically looks desperately for an internet connection.
Yeah.
Everything it can detect, it's trying to log into, and you know, if people turned them off, it probably wouldn't happen, would it?
Yeah, that's right. That's the trouble. People are trying to use the CAN Wi-Fi on their for the system. We're going to have a problem with all the mobile phones trying to log onto it. Mine doesn't, because my Wi-Fi is turned off, as in with data. I only turn them on when I want to use them.
Yeah, that's what you should do.
I'm not familiar with 433. Is that Bluetooth?
Sorry? No. Bluetooth starts at 2401 megahertz. It goes up to 2480.
It's just in the 22.4 gigahertz, isn't it?
The standard car alarm ones are on 433 megs.
Yeah.
Whereas Wi-Fi is 2.4 gig. 2.45 gigs Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 2.4. Wi-Fi can also be interfered with by microwave ovens. They use 2.45 gig.
And radio control, but my steam engines are at 2.4.
Oh right, they should. Oh, that's unusual then, because that's
they
used to be a lot lower. It was the CB radios interfere. They gave them a new channel to work with for aircraft.
Yeah, no, if you buy a modern 16mm steam radio controlled steam loco, it uses they come with 2.4 gigahertz radio control.
And the new frequency from 27 megs was 35 megs for radio control. And now that's nearly empty because everyone's going over to 2.4 gigs.
Yeah. Explains. Yeah. So it was. That's right. Because 27, although it wasn't a legal CB frequency, people were buying American AM CB radios, which interfered with the model aircraft. So they gave them 35 because the aircraft would seem to be dangerous because they would crash into people. Boats and planes don't. Boats and cars don't. So they left them on 27.
Yeah, 35 megs is for airborne only.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're all moving up to 2.4, that's because there's a lot more 2.4 stuff around. Trouble is then starts the interference with everything else.
I had a Volvo car many years ago that would ring our friend's doorbell.
Yeah. Oh. No, I mean, this is the world all over, isn't it? I mean, they find something useful, and then everybody jumps on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And the commercial people are saying, "Come on, have this," and chucking it through, and it's, it'll just grind to a halt more or less, won't it? And they'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. Why do you need to connect your toaster to the internet? I don't know, but people won't try to do it. You think, why? It's like something else I know they've done this. You think, why have you put those facilities on the machine other than you can? Yeah, but do you need to? Answer, no.
I certainly don't want my fridge talking to anything else.
Well, no.
It beggars belief. I mean, I can manage to look after what's in the fridge.
Yeah.
The only advance I've seen that's of any use for a fridge is when you leave the door open, it starts for too long. It makes an audible warning sound, because otherwise you're going to get a sort of frosted up fridge, aren't you? So
why not have a servo operated door that has shut itself?
No. Yeah.
And then you
I don't want C-bus running around my house.
you'd find all your grandkids locked in the fridge, wouldn't you?
Well, you'd find one of them locked in, wouldn't you?
If there's anything tasty in there already.
The reason I asked about Bluetooth was that you actively have to pair it, from my understanding. So that seems to be a much better way of connecting remotely rather than using Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I have a Bluetooth DCC system, which uses a phone app through Bluetooth to talk to an Arduino over an HC5 module, talks to an Arduino that then runs the DC system. But the phone app is rather simply done. It's you can have a choice. You can set a local address as long as you don't mind using 1 to 20, because they're just set automatically. But I mean, it works well enough. But I wouldn't. It's not a sophisticated one, and I don't know whether it would work in a noisy environment where there's a lot of things going on. But I mean, where I live, it's fairly remote, sort of. You know, it's not, well, I say fairly remote. It's not highly population density, really.
My headphones are Bluetooth, and they're working in a very noisy environment at the moment.
Electrically or audibly?
Well, I mean, all that lot round him, I expect there is quite a lot of electrical noise.
Well, I'm next to all sorts of devices, aren't I? So we got a coffee break next week, chaps. So bring your own coffee and biscuits, and we might sort of have a chat about what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year. Okay.
Yep.
Bring all your ideas along, and don't say let's. I think one of the things we could, there are things we could do in 2022 when we're maybe a bit better off. One of those is organise a trip for us to go up to see the Merg enhanced O-gauge railway of what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. Pete Waterman, yeah. And of course, McKinley Railway is they might be taking visitors again soon, so that's probably worth going to see. I don't know as if they use Merg stuff, but certainly Pete Waterman's got CANCABs all the way around his layout, loads of them.
Ian Hart's working with McKinley at the moment to help automate a lot of their stuff.
Oh, is he doing Merg stuff or doing his own stuff with it?
I think it's a combination.
Railroad and Co, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, they use Railroad and Co, but they've got a customized version of it. Customized for themselves, because they over multiple screens, aren't they, Clive? I've never been there, but I've seen the videos.
I've been there. It's got about, well, when I went there were about 4 screens, I think. But,
well, they've expanded it now, Adrian, haven't they? I don't know how recent.
Everyone who was controlling a loco had a tablet.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's moved on since I went,
So they use Railroad and Co. They use Train Controller in the semi-automatic mode, don't they, Clive?
I don't know if it's automatic or semi. I think it's probably.
I think they wouldn't have any hand controllers if they had semi, unless it was semi.
You get your instructions on the tablet, and then I think you have to manually can do what you've been told using a local cab.
Yeah, because my one's fully automatic, but I could drive it so that some things were automatic and other things I could take direct control of certain train movements. which is obviously what McKinley do.
Yeah, I think they can do either.
That would, yeah. Well, they might be able to switch it into a fully automatic one. I don't know.
I think they can.
I've never, yeah, yeah, and yeah, coffee break next Friday, chaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 minutes early. How's that?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Don, for your presentation.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I hope it was useful.